Hello, this is Chris Heasley with the Chris Heasley Radio Show. We are told regularly that our country is the greatest in the world. And from an ideological standpoint, it absolutely is. What's built into the moral foundations of our country is a spirit of independence, a spirit of resilience. It's how our country was founded. And those are all the things necessary that one needs for self-determination. So from a moral standpoint, yes, our country ideologically is the greatest in the world. But what about the quality of life, the standard of living? Are we the greatest in the world when it comes to a standard of living? You know, this week, and we are told regularly that the Chinese are living a substandard quality of life. That the Chinese are sort of, they're sort of, eating their last morsel of rice out of the bottom of the bowl. They're living in a state of abject poverty. And this is what our corporate media is telling us as they ship our jobs to China, that we're superior from a quality of standard living and they're inferior. This is what our corporate media is telling us as we open up our borders to free trade. This is what our corporate media is telling us as we have this debate on the supposed evils of tariffs, that we have a higher quality of standard here in America than the Chinese. This debate rages as our economy is in debate. This is what our corporate media is telling us as we endure a flood of borderless immigration. We're told that our quality of life is greater than that of the average Chinaman, that the Chinese are living in a state of abject poverty. And it's very important to note that while all these things exist in China, China closes down its borders with tariffs. It's fully wrapped up in their industries are protected with tariffs. This is what we were told as China has highly restrictive immigration. Essentially, there is no immigration in China. Their borders are sealed tight. So there's no immigration. They're protected with tariffs. They don't have these sort of things here. And the question is it true? Is our quality of life better than that of the Chinese? Well, this week I sat in on a podcast. I watched a podcast called News Treason. And the host is a man named Dave, and he has spent 10 years living and working in China. He's visited over 500 Chinese cities. He's toured unannounced more than 100 Chinese factories. And he gives a completely different perspective than what we are being told here in America. And the question is, are we being fed a lie? Are they telling us one thing to sort of keep us in our seats, to make us think that our lives are that great, when in fact, the world is passing us up? Because as the world does these other measures, as they do tariffs, as they restrict their immigration, as they embrace the family unit, it appears that they may be passing us up from a quality of life standpoint. So why are we being told this regularly by our corporate media? Why are our elected leaders continuing to push these fallacious ideas on our people? And what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to give you one humdinger of a fact that came from this News Treason podcast that I watched. Here's one humdinger of a fact. China has the highest homeownership rate in the world, according to News Treason. China has the greatest homeownership rate in the world. That's certainly humbling, isn't it? So if this is true, if the Chinese have a great homeownership, and we're going to get more into some facts and figures about China, then we have to ask us, why is our corporate media feeding us this hogwash? Why is this happening? I think that it's time where we are sort of in this great awakening phase where we've been told that, our history has been taught to us through approved lectures, through approved publications, and we've been taught to read and memorize facts. And that's what our K through 12 education was. Read and memorize facts. And then we come out like robots spitting out these facts. And we're in a different era now. We're in what I would call a great awakening, an awakening phase where we're learning that we've been told lies. And there are non-traditional sources of media, and they're arising by the day, by the minute. And I think it's important that we all start looking to these non-traditional sources of media. And the truth is, that these non-traditional sources of media, with all of them, there's a margin of error on the information that they're giving us, because the truth is, when you're finding the truth, you can't just read and memorize it. We're all trying to find it. And what's going to happen with our people is, rather than just being meaningless drones memorizing facts like robots, what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to begin considering new arguments and then relying on our gut instinct. That's what's coming, okay? And that's an incredible thing, because that's why we are the thinking animal, right? God gave us the greatest asset, which is the mind. And it's time that we start using it. It's time that we start considering non-traditional sources of media and then thinking and debating. And everything I'm saying today, I want to debate. I want the feathers kicked out of it, right? But that's where we have to go. And then we have to make some conclusions based on our gut instinct and learn to trust our gut instinct. And with that being said, I want to get to the story, according to News Treason, about China. And essentially the argument is this. China comes from a totalitarian regime, right? It was Maoist communist China, and that was a bloody, ruthless dictatorship. But the one thing that Mao did not do is he did not push a hypersexualization on the people. He was a very bad guy, but thankfully he didn't do this one thing. He didn't push hypersexualization on the people of China, and the family unit stayed intact under communist China. Okay. And so a lot of so what that sort of did is, once they broke the shackles of the communist reign, and it's not communist today, it's authoritarian, which is not good, but it's free enterprise authoritarian. And because the family unit's still intact, and because the hypersexualization agenda has never been placed on it, they have a good foundation to grow their country, to grow their morality, to grow their economic base. It should be noted that right now today in China has Christianity is booming. All religions are booming in China. Okay, so the regime in China today it's authoritarian. If you speak out against the Chinese government, they will pull money out of your accounts. They will shut you down. That's without question, and that is not good. Right. But at the same time, they're letting these other sort of ideas flourish, which is contributing to the overall economic growth and flourishing of that country. And religion, which all religions embrace the family, nearly all religions. There's a few out there that need to go. But generally speaking, all religions embrace the family unit, and they embrace the man-wife union. And they embrace the sort of companionship and community. All of those ideas are well intact in China. They never went through this debate about what is a man and what is a woman, which in my opinion was purposely inserted into our culture to trip us up. Okay? Absolutely. And so we need to start asking questions. We need to start asking questions. Who did this? Because it wasn't a mistake. It wasn't an accident. Some evil genius thought up this idea. Let's disrupt the family unit. Let's disrupt the man-woman union. Let's disrupt their moral fabric. And they inserted these ideas into our country to trip us up. It should be noted that these ideas do not exist in China, but every other Asian country where there's Western influence, these ideas exist. Yes. Hypersexualization, the destruction of the family, the discouragement of the man-wife union. And in Japan, these ideas exist. In South Vietnam, they exist. But in China, which has largely kept these Western ideas away from their borders, the family unit is flourishing and thriving, and their communities are thriving. Okay, so I want to go to some of these. It should also be noted that environmentalism is not embraced in China. Now, right. They take no account of environmentalism. I want to say almost no account of the environment into their decisions. When they want to build a highway, they build a highway. Right. And I'm not saying that's right. But I'm saying that in our country, environmentalism is used as a weapon to slow our development. The entire purpose of environmentalism should be that a factory and a forest stand together in harmony, and that can happen. But the left, the way they view environmentalism is, let's just go ahead and destroy all industry for the sake of nothing, because they're they're not healthy people, okay? And so in China, but the point being is that in China, environmentalism is not used as a weapon and a tool against them. So they're really, really booming in China. Okay, so let me find these facts here, guys. Give me 1 second. Home ownership rate in China is 95%. That's the greatest in the world. 95% of families either own a nice apartment or a home. They built so many. Oh, this is very important. Less than 18% of Chinese homeowners have a mortgage. That is right. 80 to 82% of Chinese homeowners own their homes outright. Okay? So what happened in China is they built so many homes that now they're very affordable. Again, I'm not saying that's the perfect solution, but I want it to get into your head. Can you imagine living without a mortgage? I mean, the truth is that in the early days of this country, there were no mortgages. It didn't exist. Right. People built homes and lived in them. They stayed at home with mom and dad for 2 years. They built the home. They lived in it. And you see, what the banker class does is they constantly weaken the economy, largely by inflating the currency, right? They tinker with the currency. They weigh it down. They water it down until we all have to live on loans to get from day to day. Right. Okay, it is an attack on our people. And that goes along with the idea of a mortgage. Yes, that is true. For the longest time in this country, there were no such things as mortgages. And loans, generally speaking, were minuscule. They were minuscule. But again, the tinkering of the economy, the watering down of our economy, the exodus of our industry, and boom, we need a loan to go get a Whataburger, right? And so in China, 18% of Chinese homeowners have a mortgage. That means 80+% of Chinese homeowners do not own a mortgage. And this is just like it was in America in the 1950s. 1950s America was boomtown USA. People were enjoying their lives. They weren't enslaved with debt. Car loans. Don't have any facts and figures on this, but according to Dave on News Treason, he traveled that country, and he says that generally speaking, people have cars and they don't have car loans. They pay cash for their cars. So again, I think it's very important it's been so infused into our mind that we need loans. Loans are everywhere, that the idea that we can live debt-free, that it can happen. And I'm not putting this on you to pay your debts or none of that Dave Ramsey stuff. I'm saying from a philosophical perspective, from a political perspective, we need to change the foundations of the country to get away from this watered down economy, which they stole our economy from us and they've enslaved us, okay? The quality of homes. The quality of homes in China are good. There's some bad, there's some good, but as you get closer to the coastal areas where they're more exposed to tsunamis, they have no choice but to build a quality home. So over the course of China, the quality of homes is rising. Now listen to this one, guys. Listen to this one. Right now, Xi, the president of China, the Xi regime is promoting stay-at-home mothers. Stay-at-home mothers, which is considered a luxury in the West, is becoming doable. It's becoming possible for more and more Chinese moms to stay at home. Isn't that what we all want?
Yes.
Isn't that what the children need the mother in the home? And with this idea I just proposed, it's almost taboo in America to suggest that, right? But that is the truth, and that's where our country came from. The mothers, they stay at home, they tend to the children, they give the guidance the children they need, all of those things. And that child needs that love of an at-home mother. Yes. And in China, it's happening. But in America, we're seeing increased divorce rates because our families are becoming so weighed down with stress. The purpose of this monologue is to get you active, so you start asking these questions and you start going to your county commissioner's courts and pressing these issues. Starting a business. If you want to start a business in China, it is no problem. It is easier to start a business, build a business, buy and own a home in China. All things are easier, okay? So there it is right there. But, what do we have here in America? We've got NAFTA. We've got these preferred trade status. We have outsourcing. All of these reverse psychology ideas that they've put into our heads. And so the question is, when you're talking to businessmen, the typical answer is, oh, the ups and downs of the economy. It's going to be good one year. It's going to be bad the next. Just prepare for it. All of this negative nanny stuff, right? And the truth is that an economy, if left to its own devices, naturally grows. It grows. It's only when the political class gets involved and they begin implementing an income tax on us, implementing a Federal Reserve on us, then they get control of they get the steering wheel of the economy, and they get to turn it in the direction that they want. They get to, okay, we're going to have a boom bust cycle. Let's go ahead and do a boom bust cycle this time, right? They're keeping us down. They're keeping us enslaved. And so I totally push back on that idea that is accepted thinking. It's the default position of America's business class that, it's just the economy's just going to boom and bust. Get used to it. No more of that. Push back on that idea. And what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to give you action points right here and now that you can start moving forward on in your conversations to start making this a reality. And the first one is, I want you to think about this. Right now, President Trump has trial ballooned, thrown it up in the air for debate, the concept of removing the income tax. Removing the income tax. And now that's becoming more formalized with removing the income tax on the first $150,000 of income. This country existed for more than 100 years without an income tax. Mm-hmm. The entire idea that someone can take a chunk of your flesh, a chunk of your change, was completely immoral to the early foundations of this country, to the early fabric of this country. It was gross. It was gross. Yes. Okay, but what do? They propose the income tax. They get the CPA designated status so that then there's a whole career of men that are out there chasing you for your income tax. They pay off the business schools to get it in our head, and boom, you pay your taxes. Pay your taxes like a good citizen. Okay. Now I want you to think about, should the income tax go away? I want you to think about what that will do for the country. Number one, for the common man, it means that more food on the table, more vacations with the family, the stay-at-home moms, so many things. It will have a compounding effect on the economy. A compounding effect. It's going to be incredible, right? May I be so bold as to dream? I'm going to go there. It's going to make it easier to start a business. It's going to spur development into new businesses. It's going to lower the risk margin of new ventures, of R&D projects. I believe the greatest is yet to come. It's going to be an inconceivably good. That's how it's going to be. Now, I want to give you another idea. What President Trump is essentially doing right now is he is removing the American deep state. It is incredible. The USAID is gone. The Department of Education is gone. The IRS is cut in half. These are ideas that were inconceivable. If you had even suggested these sort of things a few years ago, you'd be laughed out of the room. But it is an incredible thing that he's doing, because here's what he's doing. He's getting rid of all of the unnecessary fat in our government. Yes. And then he's going to take all the necessary functions and largely distribute them to the state level. And that's where Texans, you better get ready, because the fight's going to come at the state level, because there's a deep state in place right now ready for that to happen. And you better be ready with these arguments to fight for your rights, because that's what's coming. So he's putting it on your table. He's putting it on your shelf. You deal with it at the state level. It's a distributed power source. It's the way things should happen. It's like blockchain, right? Distributed, right? The deep state, the banker class, they always want it centralized, because a table on one leg is easier to tip over, right? No. You put the table on 4 legs. You put the table on 6 legs. You put the table on 8 legs. You distribute these functions to the 50 states in America. And finally, I want to give a shout out to our own Texan, a great hero by the name of Ron Paul. And this man is serious as serious can be, but the corporate media lampooned him because he is that good, okay? And what he did for 20 years was pounded his fist with the idea of end the Fed, okay? End the Fed. A debt-based currency system. The entire concept of it is that, just because some bankers decided that they paid off Senator Aldrich, that they got the golden printer and they print the cash and we all owe them. We all owe them interest. For what?
Yeah.
What did they do? They're not making a hamburger. They're not shining a shoe. They're not fixing a fence. They're not digging a ditch. They're pressing a button, printing, and getting rich to the heavens. Okay? This is Tony Soprano 101. They are a bunch of Tony Sopranos that speak better, have better command of the English language, come off as professorial, but they are nothing more than Tony and Paulie running a scam, running a racket. Okay? And what President Trump is doing, see, what they're doing with this Federal Reserve, here's what they're doing, is they are, the bankers had this idea to enslave us for a lifetime. So the whole idea was we will fund the government with debt-based currency notes that you will be responsible for on your back at no fault of your own, at no decision of your own. No, you're going to pay for this government, and then we're going to bloat the government. We're going to make it larger than you could even imagine. It's going to just inconceivably grow like a cancer until you're dead. That's what they're doing, okay? So what is President Trump doing? He's eradicating the fat. He's getting he's bringing that government down to its essential functions. I'd like to say one thing that's very important. We do have social services that need to be paid for, and they will continue to be paid for. And then they will, I believe they will be, I believe the health and strength of paying for essential Social Security and things of that, we're actually taking steps to ensure that happens for a lifetime. Right. But my point being, he's bringing that fat down, bringing that monster down, so that we don't need debt-based currency notes anymore. And then the idea that we need this institution to set market rates is just absurd when we have all these predictors out there with the click of a button. You can go on your computer and create and understand trends. We don't need this banker class to be setting these rates for us at the Federal Reserve. So what I am trying to say is that these are incredible times, and the ball is in our court. Momentum is on our side. And in no way, shape, or form are we in a good zone, right? And so it's on you. It's on each and every one of you to get involved. And this is the Chris Heasley Show. And on this show, we will bring you all the ideas, the content, the information that you need to take back your city, your village, your borough, your township, your school district, your county, our great Texas counties, and our great state of Texas. But it's on you. It's on you to get involved at the local level. Yes. Ron Paul was incredible, but he had nobody behind him. We can now have an army behind him at and change happens at the local level. Yes. Sure, you can call your federal people, that's fine, but put the lion heart, the greater share of your momentum, your energy at the local level, at the school boards, at the county commissioner courts, at your Texas state reps' houses. Get involved at the local level and fight for these ideas, because in doing so, you are setting up the future for your children and for your grandchildren, and we owe it to them, because goodness gracious, these children have been taught so many bad ideas, and they need a break, they need a relief. And with that being said, we have an incredible show today, and we have a couple of really great announcements. Great things are happening in Fort Bend County. Great things are happening in Texas, in the Houston area, and we're going to announce a couple of them right now. And on the show today, we have Kenneth Omoruyi. Kenneth, how are you doing today?
Good. Thank you so much for that introduction. Good. It's so nice to be back here.
Glad to have you on.
Thank you.
And we have Alexandria Butler with Urban Conservatives of America, correct?
Absolutely, yes. I'm the VP of Communications for Urban Conservatives of America.
Great, very good. Yes. So we got two announcements, and we're going to start off with Kenneth. And I'd like to announce that Kenneth Omoruyi has recently been appointed as a board member for the Texas State Board of Accountants.
Correct.
Man, that's awesome.
Thank you.
Congratulations,
so awesome.
bro.
Thank you so much.
So tell us about that.
Well, the accounting profession is regulated by the Texas State Board of Public Accountancy in the state of Texas. They may think about it as the umpire of the accounting, all accountants that are licensed in Texas, and they regulate the issuance of the CPA certificate. I'm sure we're familiar with the idea of the Certified Public Accountant. So this is the body that is charged with the responsibility of regulating the accounting, the practice of public accounting in Texas.
Very good. Yeah, that's excellent. I gave a little dig in there on accountants, on CPAs in my opening monologue, but the truth is that that is not on them. You know, they are the work that they do for our community is incredible. And, the way I look at it is that our small and medium-sized businesses are really the heart of our communities.
Yes.
And, with our accounting firms providing a necessary service to them, keeping their financials straight and in line, it's integral to the health and well-being of our small business communities. And I totally support our CPAs in Fort Bend and Harris counties.
Absolutely. I mean, the idea of the profession is actually to protect the public against unscrupulous activities,
Right.
Outside of the accounting profession. There are bad actors out there. I'm sure you agree with me.
Right.
So there needs to be a police, if you call it that way, to ensure that everyone who is practicing public accounting meets the educational requirement, meets the competency requirement, and the experience. So that's the essence of why the profession is being regulated.
And we have a really big announcement next. Alexandria Butler. You're up. Go.
Not a drum roll.
You got one.
So yes, this is I guess we'll call it an informal announcement because we haven't officially announced it, but I am running for CD9, Congressional District 9, which happens to be Al Green's seat. I'm very excited about it. I've gotten to meet some very beautiful, wonderful people in this district. I think it's very important that we, the Word of God says to condescend to men of lower estate. And that doesn't mean, be condescending. It just means that, don't see yourself as high and mighty, but, bring yourself back down to earth, and that just comes naturally for me, just being down to earth. But the people are looking for somebody that is going to resonate, with them, somebody that's authentic. And you had made mention earlier about, not going with tradition. And I think that rumbling is going in every sector of the earth right now. People are running from tradition and they are going towards somebody that they see as wise, intuitive, kind of like a visionary, somebody that can kind of, not necessarily like a psychic or anything, but somebody that can see what's coming ahead based on their experiences in the past. And so we're kind of in a different time right now. And it's a transitionary period. So we're in a changing of the guard. We're putting responsible people in position. I think about like a CPA, like in the Bible talks about publicans, right? And I think it was Matthew, one of the disciples was a publican, but he promised, hey, I don't take anybody's money. I'm honest, I exact people exactly what, they're due,
Right.
And that is what we need. We need good people in positions like that to protect and serve. And so one of my missions is, and my mission statement is, a new era of service has arrived. And I believe that because I'm here to serve the people. I'm not here to serve myself, which is some of the stuff that you mentioned and what you're talking about. There's been a lot of mismanagement of finances here in America. There's been a lot of mismanagement in different levels of this country. And so we're dealing with people who have been disaffected by this, and you can see it in the standard of living and the homeless crisis, the mental health crisis. All factors of society are completely discombobulated as a result of our lack of community in comparison to China, who has a great community, right? They know how to come together. These people, I even see them when they come here. I look, I get my nails done or whatever, and I ask them, are you from China? Yeah. They will come here and they will put all their money together, and one person will start a business, and when that business makes a certain amount, then the next person will go start their business. They will pool their money together as a community. And in that word community is unity, and we don't have unity in America. There is a lot of disharmony, a lot of disunity, and I think when we hear about the term "Make America Great Again," we need to bring ourselves back to that level of community that we had in the 50s, when you could go pay cash for a house, when you could go pay cash for a car, when you didn't have debt accumulating like you have now. You took pride in working for what you had, and people would band together, come together and unity and harmony, and synergy,
Right.
and kind of flow and operate together as humans are supposed to do.
Right.
Yeah.
No.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
I want to congratulate you for, throwing your hat in the ring to run for the Congress, and
Thank you.
it's such a very, very great honor to be able to do that. I ran for Congress in the last election.
Oh, wow.
in
You can help me
Texas,
then.
No, absolutely. I mean, I'm really, really glad that we're having more people of integrity standing up to
Thank you.
to run, and I really, really wish you the very, very best in that.
Coming from you, that's a deep honor. Thank you, brother.
Absolutely.
I think your observation on the Chinese is incredible. And, again, I feel like Americans, like, the one thing that we need to do is we need to give ourselves a pat on the back, because we have been under an ideological attack by the American deep state, by the intellectual class, by the banker class for a lifetime without our knowing it. And one of the ideas they inserted into our heads, while the Chinese come together communally, like a community, we had this idea introduced into our head from birth to be a cutthroat businessman. Right. That it cutthroat.
Even parents will do that. They'll kick their kids out at 18. They don't do that over in China. I mean, you're living in your house. I mean, in other cultures, it's normal to be 25 living in your parents' house. We look down upon that like, oh, you're living with your mama. You know what? They're saving money.
Yeah.
So we should take some notes, like from the Hispanics. They do that too. They'll stay all in one house. We should be pushing that more, incentivizing that more.
So many ideas were put into our head. Cutthroat businessman.
Yes.
But in like the idea that no, business should be communal, right? The idea I remember as a child being taught that the idea of win-win relationships was just silly, foolish thinking. No, the entire premise of business is win-win relationships.
Right.
But more so, growing up as a child, I grew up in watching the economic destruction of my hometown, Youngstown, Ohio, at no fault of our own, right? And that got in my psyche where I questioned the whole idea if businesses can work.
Yes.
But in addition to that, what they put into our heads is get a good union job, get a pension, all of these ideas. And then they made the idea of starting a business seem so difficult that it was almost inconceivable.
Absolutely.
And so when we graduated, mentally we were positioned to go a different way, whereas the Chinese come over and they start a laundromat, they start a small business, and they didn't have these bad concepts put into their heads, and really they're really like the early Americans, right? Like when Americans first came over and they were bootstrapping.
Absolutely.
And so something needs to be done at our education level.
Yes.
The fact that right now we're in our school board, we're having these school board wars where we're fighting over the hypersexualization of our children, and that there's still a considerable amount of people that are fighting for these nefarious ideas in our community.
Right.
Again, that's why we have to overpower them at the local level. We have to embrace the roots of Texas, the roots of America, the family unit, and just take back our communities.
Let me quickly piggyback on a conversation that you jumped on earlier on about mismanagement.
Yes.
Really appreciate the introduction that
it was wonderful.
Chris made.
Yes.
I sincerely believe the problem of America is not about revenue generation.
Right. We have no issue getting money.
But revenue management.
Absolutely.
I'll just to quickly make a very plain disclaimer here. My opinions are that of Kenneth Omoruyi. Is not about the Texas State Board of Public Accountancy.
Yes,
okay.
I got you, brother.
If you see what's going on right now at the national scene, I'll talk about that and then bring it down to the local level.
Bring it home.
Doge. Let's talk about Doge for a minute.
Yes.
Okay. And this is the Department of Government Efficiency that is currently run by Elon Musk.
Yes.
Not a lot of people can dispute their findings.
Right.
Because you can argue with your opinion about what you think should be or what should not be, but you cannot argue with the fact.
That's right.
You are entitled to your opinion. You're not entitled to the facts.
Right.
Right now, it is, according to Doge, they have saved about over $160 billion alone.
Yes.
Based on the findings that they have made by canceling contracts, by canceling grants, and also cutting down and tackling some of those waste in our workforce system. Let me give you some examples, real stats. Do you know that there were over 24,000 people who are over 115 years old receiving unemployment that was found out by Doge.
Wow.
Beyond just that, there was a person who received about $40-something thousand that was about 2,145 years old. I don't know if
That is
if you-
absolutely ridiculous.
I want to live that long.
Me too.
when you hear things like this, and I mean, I can go on and on about close to 28,000 people who've yet to be born. They're like 15 years into the future that are currently receiving unemployment benefits.
Amazing. They're just creating entities and taking the money.
In fact, these are mind-blowing numbers
Yes.
that every concerned, in fact, another one was right now in the Social Security system, one of the things that they, according to them, found out over 20 million individuals that are dead but are still in the Social Security system as if they were alive.
Amazing.
Over 20 million of those people.
Amazing.
So I really believe beyond revenue generation, management of these revenue, because we can be blessed by
yes.
any, by the resources that God has given us.
Right.
But if we are not able to manage
gotta be
that
good steward.
resources good, then there is a problem.
You must be
And
a
we
good
can talk
steward.
about that a little bit. But I'm going to bring that down a little bit to the county, our county, Fort Bend County. In 2019, a few years ago, Fort Bend County self-disclosed to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. They were alleging a violation of what they call the Civil Monetary Penalties Law by submitting claims for services that lacked proper authorization. And you know how much that cost Fort Bend County? $4.5 million in taxpayer money.
Can you repeat that stat again, please?
So the county self-reported to the Office of the Inspector General.
This is public information.
Correct.
Right.
The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services for allegedly violating the Civil Monetary Penalties Law by submitting claims for services that lacked proper authorization. And as a result, they were willing to pay over $4.5 million US in taxpayer money.
Taxpayer money.
If, for example, as residents of Fort Bend County, we are aware of situations like or things like this. If you know your money is being used to pay for the lack of leadership, for the lack of, I would say, controls, internal controls by the county, wouldn't you be outraged?
You should be.
So these are the kind of situations we're talking about. It's beyond just, we can attribute some of these to corruption, but also what in internal control, the first thing you learn is it trickles down from the top, the
Right.
tone at the top.
That's right.
The ethical leadership starts from the tone at the top. What kind of leadership do we have?
Can I
a
say
lack of
something real
leadership.
quick? A lot of people are up in arms about what Elon Musk is doing through Doge, right? And, any good, like when a new CEO or new leadership comes into any business, the smartest thing to do is hire like a headhunter of some sort that's going to come in and eliminate waste from the top down, right? That is their job. You should do that. You should see where those weaknesses are so you can get a good control and even a good overview of your company before you really start getting established and getting your feet wet and moving that company in a certain direction. You cannot go any direction until you are confident about what all the monies are doing. So it shouldn't be any surprise to any business owner that Trump would use an outside source like Elon Musk, the richest man who has no reason to steal anything from any of us. Excuse me. So I just wanted to interject that people have a lot of questions about his place, his role. He's not even elected. That's good. He's the perfect person to do something like that. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I just wanted to interject.
No, I think that's very important. I think what they do is they purposely make our governments overly confusing.
Absolutely.
I do not believe our governments should be funding sports stadiums. They should not be funding gymnasiums, all of these ideas.
I agree.
But what they do is they constantly heap on more and more government on our backs so that it just gets too confusing,
Right.
and we don't
It's
even know where to
overwhelming.
ask. We don't even know where to ask the first question.
Right.
And boom, then they're losing 4.5. So again, I think it's all about just bringing things back down to a simplistic
Clarity.
level, which is what Doge is doing.
That's exactly what Doge is doing.
I think I'd really believe we need a Doge, not just at the national level.
Doge,
we need
Texas.
it at the state. We also need it at the county level.
Those are the counties.
You're going to need to hire protection by.
I was going to
by
say,
saying
you
that.
might want to get security to help you, because when they start hearing
No,
stuff like that, you're going to start
well-
finding out who's the man behind the curtain, you know?
Right.
The truth is that there was a time when you could not make a suggestion like that. If you made a suggestion like that, you would be asked to leave the state of Texas. I know this
Wow.
has happened to people.
Wow.
Okay, but I believe we're well beyond that.
Yeah.
I think that this deep state at the county level, at the state level, at all levels, is so hampered. I feel like their Achilles have been cut, and they're so hampered that they can't go and have that threatening, intimidating factor anymore.
Right.
So sing it to the heavens. I totally agree.
Yeah, no, I mean, look at what is currently happening with the current county judge.
Right.
Today, I mean, I'm sure it's all over the news about
It is.
how he's been indicted. Of course, it's still alleged at this point.
Right.
But-
Innocent until proven guilty.
Correct. But what are we projecting in terms of the leadership? What are the ethics around some of the allegations that have been alleged?
Absolutely.
Are these the kind of leaders we want to lead in county, or do we need leaders that have the ethical, leadership, the moral leadership to be able to lead the county? Those are
I
the
believe that
questions
what
we
we are
should be
right
asking.
now, and this is a fascinating time, and we are witnessing the implosion, the destruction of the Democrat Party.
It's
it is
beautiful.
still a mean machine, but the way
It
I
is.
sort of equate, it's sort of like at the federal level, they're like a snake with their head cut off.
Yeah.
Right. But at the same time, they're like the last Japanese soldier, defending a Filipino island, right? And so they're well dug in and ready for a fight.
Oh, yeah.
But I believe we're witnessing the beginnings of the end of the American Democrat Party.
Right.
And at the county level, they're hemorrhaging, right? Their star quarterback, KP George, is imploding.
Yes.
They have one drama after another on their side. But then the question becomes, right? Does a new establishment arise in its place?
Yes.
Are there opportunists within the grassroots movement that are looking to capitalize on this, and then they become, because again, I mean, Fort Bend County, Harris County, these Fort Bend, 800,000 people, I don't know how many people in Harris, over a couple million, right? And that kind of, if you become the new leader of the county, it's
Right.
it's empowering,
Oh,
right?
yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so then the question becomes, do they then be? I feel like it's gonna happen, but
I mean,
do they
of course.
start to move to become the new establishment?
Of course they do. I mean, look at what happened. They tried to do this when COVID was a thing. I mean, I lost my business during COVID. I sat and watched the power grab at the local level. That was just, they used this sickness, they weaponized it against us. They did all of this to gain power and momentum, and it was amazing. They cared nothing about us. They didn't even want us to go outside and get sunlight. They wanted us to separate from each other. They wanted to keep that era of lack of community alive. And then they went on this money and power grab. And now you're about to see the most desperate power moves and power grabs you've ever seen, because like brother said here, there is no problem with our ability to get money. We have money, it's just floating out there. But now that these other places are being cut off, they have no streams of income coming in. Now this money is now going to matriculate back into our economy, and there is so much money to be made, and people are going to start seeing how they can get this money, how they can take advantage. They're going to see that, and you're going to see very desperate power moves. Right now, we are witnessing on the national level Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie Sanders joining together, and they're not saying they're campaigning. but they're campaigning. It is very obvious they're
Right.
campaigning. Jasmine Crockett is basically the leader of the Democratic Party right now. Like, how did this happen? So we see the tide is changing, right? And so these individuals, a lot on the left are very either amoral or immoral. And so they are going to go with the loudest person that's making the most noise because they're about making money. These presidential moves are about getting money. They saw how much Kamala got and wasted. She had a deficit at the end, but
Right.
she was able to blow millions of dollars on frivolous things. They want in.
So, I mean, all those points you just made are really viable point. What is our response to this as
Right.
conservative? We need good alternatives, right?
Right.
But at the national level and at the local level, right?
Every level.
Exactly. So, I mean, we need leaders like you to be able to counter that, right?
Right.
On our side.
Absolutely.
And bringing it down to the county level where we live,
Right.
we need good alternative. It's
Absolutely.
for me, I believe it's not enough for us to look at what they're doing on the other side and say, well, that's, when you point one finger, three fingers
Three
point back to
fingers
you.
are pointing back.
So we need an alternative.
I love how
yes.
you're saying we.
Absolutely.
I like how Chris says our people, and that includes everybody. It doesn't matter about
No,
this
I
skin
remember-
color.
I-
He says our people. He's
That's right.
talking about American citizens, those of us. You keep saying we. We have to hold each other accountable.
Community engagement.
We have to
Absolutely.
engage with each other.
Correct.
We have to build rapport with every leader at all of these levels. We need to be communicating.
Right.
We need to show the people of the community that we can work together. We're not working against each other. This whole I'm against Trump, impeach him, work with the man, because the people are missing out as a result of us not being willing to work with our leadership. We have a problem with authority in America. And so when it's kind of like a situation where a mom's been raising her kids by herself, right? Kids are not listening. But when a man comes in the house, at first, the kids are going to try to buck up against that man because they don't understand authority yet. But once that man establishes authority, because there's always a little transitionary period, that's where we're at in America. We're in this space where the people are still trying to buck up against authority, but others are like, man, just shut up and let's get this thing, let's get this money, let's do this. That's where we're at in this transitionary period. So we have to work together. We also have to be willing to reach across the aisle and say, hey,
Right.
look, yeah, I'm a Republican, and you might be a Democrat, but there are places where we can help the people together.
Right.
There is common ground. The common ground is the people.
True. No, I mean, I tell you the kind of the perspective that I see America from
Yes.
is from the lens of gratitude. As an
Absolutely.
immigrant who came to this country,
Yes.
I can tell you there's so much to fix, for
Yes.
sure.
Yes.
But this country, the United States, represents the greatest nation on the world.
It does.
On earth,
And we're so
in the world.
we're free, but at what cost? Like,
Correct.
you're comparing with totalitarianism, right? But the thing is, liberty does not mean no rules. It does not mean antinomianism. So we have these freedoms here, and we don't have totalitarianism, but we have serious issues that
Right.
are manifesting right before our eyes.
It's gonna take trust. It's gonna take a very, very deliberate, concerted effort to be
Yes.
able to overcome
Very
the tide
deliberate, very on purpose effort.
of what we're experiencing.
Yeah,
Sure.
I mean, I think there is going to be a new establishment that arises up, and they're going to want to silence opposition. And I think that the antidote to that is staying in their face,
Yes.
and letting them know that we're not going away. We will
Right.
not take their one-word
Right.
answer. We will not take their one-word answers to our questions as acceptable.
Nope, not at
We
all.
will always push back. We will always question, and we will always shout it to the rooftops. We are in a time right now with this, this sort of new emerging type of communication systems, these podcasts and
Yes.
and Rumble and these different platforms that are popping up.
Yes.
And we need to utilize those.
Yes.
It's a real problem for elected leaders.
It really is. And they just have to be cognizant and aware. having a good worldview, having a good view of where the people are at is very important. If you're going to say that I'm serving these people, but you don't even know them, you've never shaken their hands, you don't know what their real problems and issues are. We can't put a Band-Aid on anymore, and the people are not going to be happy about it. They are pressing on us to do a better job, and so we have a responsibility to say, you know what, this has gone on long enough. You know, observe the patterns. And start being about action.
No, I agree. I mean, I think it starts with that community engagement.
Absolutely.
Beyond, I mean, the resident needs to be informed. Some of the things that we've spoken about, today, a lot of these are things that would be concerning to anyone who is in the community when they are aware of that. Right. So that's why a resident needs to stay informed.
When they are aware
of that. Correct.
See, that's the problem. There is a deliberate dumbing down of Americans, and it's been going on for a very long time, where the people are being told what to think so they can become this kind of robot that inputs and outputs like some sort of an algorithm, and they just function according to what they've learned in school, but they are not being taught how to think cognitively and to use their brains. Right. And so when you confront them with truth and facts, they think that their feelings are facts. Right. They think that their feelings are outweighing the truth about a situation. So it places them in their mindset in a place of cognitive dissonance. So that whereas they should choose the truth, their feelings begin to trump the truth.
But that's why we're having show like this, right? We need to encourage shows like this because what we're doing is we're trying to bring these facts, right? Like I said earlier, you are entitled to your opinion, but we're not entitled to the facts. Right. Bringing these facts out and letting the community be aware of some of these things that are happening within us so that they can get more sensitized and involved with what's going on.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's been a strategy and a tactic to sort of weaponize our government, to weaponize the practice of lending against the people, right? And I'd like to point out that it was Christ that took on the money changers.
That's right, he did.
Right?
Absolutely.
He overturned their tables.
He did. Whipped them.
It was Muhammad that took an active stance against the practice of money lending.
Yes.
And it's outlawed in many Islamic countries.
Yes.
And so I feel like, again, getting back to the idea that life needs to become simple again.
It does.
Those, our religious leaders, they identified this early on.
Right, they did.
And so it's been around for centuries.
Yes.
And I just feel like it's time. When Kenneth is pointing out a $4.5 billion loss.
Million.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm sorry, $4.5 million loss at the county level.
Right, at the county level. That's a lot of money.
The county level, it just shows that these problems grow like a cancer, and it's just going to require all of us to get in there and tackle it and strap them down and require them to reduce the size of our government.
I think it rises and falls on the leadership.
It absolutely does. A river never rises higher than its source.
Correct.
And if the source is all mucky and mired, what do we expect the river to look like?
For the first 100 years of this country, it was funded by tariffs.
Yes.
And it was President McKinley. I believe he was the first president to coin the term America First.
Absolutely.
Trump did not coin that.
No, he didn't.
Yeah, so it was President McKinley from around the year 1900, I believe.
Yeah.
And he was a strong advocate of tariffs.
Right.
And what happened? Somebody fed him a bad bowl of soup. He survived it, but then, when he went to the doctor for service, he was taken out, right? Joan Rivers style, Michael Jackson style, right?
I love the names you just mentioned. Joan Rivers.
What I'm trying to do is identify trends.
Right.
These are trends.
We've seen it over and over. The lives are being taken when you start bucking up against the system. Look at JFK.
Yeah, well, we're told that the number of presidents that were assassinated were just the ones that took a bullet. No. We've had dozens of presidents that died from a bad bowl of soup, or died when they go in for a rudimentary procedure with the doctor, and what do you know? He died on the table,
He just died.
And all of these presidents, by the way, were all nationalists.
Yes,
they were all men that pushed the idea of having a distributed economy, an economy that's locally run, that doesn't report to a central authority. they're all men that identified the practice of using the currency against people to hyperinflate the currency against the people.
Yes.
And they would advocate for a strong, healthy currency.
Right.
And so, so we need to look. We need to identify these trends because I want to bring up one more guy, Muammar Gaddafi.
Yes.
Right? Muammar Gaddafi. He proposed the idea of creating a North Africa free trade zone.
He did.
He was against the practice of money lending.
He was.
He was
Gold standard.
He wanted a metals backed currency.
Yeah.
And he had more ideas like that. And what happened to him? Hillary Clinton sent him a squad.
Hillary Clinton took him out.
And the way they took him out was the most vicious torture.
It was evil.
Rape, torture that one can experience. And then she laughed about it on TV.
Yep.
And that was absolutely a message to Vladimir Putin that he's next.
Right. It was.
Because he is also a nationalist.
Yes.
He is also defending his borders. And what I'm trying to say, that these ideas from the time of Christ, from the time of Mohammed, from the time of William McKinley, from the time of Abraham Lincoln, he also embraced it. He was introduced the greenbacks.
Yes.
Had a bullet put in his head shortly thereafter doing that.
Right.
It's the same trend over and over
it's a cycle,
again.
repetitive cycle.
And what is the answer? The answer is common sense. A strong currency, a localized government, and to get rid of the practice of money lending.
See, you mentioned Muammar Gaddafi. After he was taken out, a vacuous hole was created in the area of Libya that opened up the market for active slave trading in that area. So we now have to repair all of these breaches that are being created by the left. Okay, through these trends that you're talking about, people's lives being taken, leaders being taken out. I'm not saying Gaddafi was a great guy or perfect or anything like that. I respect him, though, because, in many ways, he had some very good ideas. He also had women guarding him. Like, he actively walked with women wearing, with AKs, they're walking with him. I always liked that. But obviously he was keeping that slave trade from happening with the Arabs that are now actively selling Africans on an open air slave market.
No, I think the perspective or the foreign policy of the United States towards other part of the world has really shifted with this administration.
It absolutely
and that's, I always want to look out for what is the outcome, what are the recommendations. So moving forward, some of those ills of the past, right, are being corrected today.
Yes.
The current administration is making a lot of shift from what has been in the past to what the voters actually the people who
what they desired.
What they desire.
Okay,
Right.
so let's shift the focus to the continent of Africa.
Yes.
Right? Something that you should be able to speak about, right? So I have to ask the question. Africa's been in a state of abject poverty since the beginning of time, while it's been run by NGOs.
Yes.
Right? And so the question is, do these NGOs actually are they parasites that are on the backs feeding off the Africans?
Good word for them.
Or are they doing a legitimate service? Well, you see President Trump comes in there and he slashes USAID's budget. USAID largely funds these NGOs.
Yes.
But at the same time, you see African leaders country after country, and they are, for the first time ever, kicking the NGOs out.
Right.
Now, the first question is, why are they doing this now? And because it's my opinion that they've wanted to do it for a lifetime, I believe that there was a sinister threat against every African leader that if they made a move against the NGOs, they would go down Muammar Gaddafi style.
Right.
Right? And do you think Muammar Gaddafi wanted NGOs in his country? No. The dude was a self-sustaining man.
He was not playing that way.
And so we're witnessing this, and just like I started my opening monologue proposing the idea of a flourishing America, is it possible that we could see the African continent flourish for the first time?
Well, again, I go back to what I just stated earlier. This current administration of President Trump has shifted the perspective of American foreign policy towards, and not just Africa, right?
Yes.
Other parts. Look at what is happening with the tariffs, for example, where I mean, did you watch the public announcement he made when during the day he did the Liberation Day?
Yes, yes.
So across the world, there's currently a shift
There
going
is a
on.
shift.
There is a shift going on.
Yes.
We have to engage with countries from the standpoint of mutually beneficial relationship,
win-win.
not parasitic relationship.
No more.
Okay, there's been fairly countries that has taken advantage of the United States, so we're trying to right those wrongs, you know.
Yes.
And then going specifically talking about Africa, I mean, I believe there should be, we should be able to create policies that is mutually beneficial, not. I don't personally believe that there are a set of people who just wants to sit down and be fed, you know, morning, afternoon, and evening.
Right.
Rather, they want to be taught how to be self-sufficient.
Help them up.
Because that way, you are not only just helping yourself, because if you keep giving aids today,
Right.
tomorrow they're going to keep coming, right?
Right.
But when we have a mutually beneficial relationship
Right.
where you're not only giving aids, but you're also teaching them how to be self-sustaining,
Right. Teach
I
them
think that's a
how.
better way to approach it.
Yes.
Well,
Nice.
will you have any comment on that?
I think, this just speaks to a lot of mismanagement and greed that occurs in Africa. And then not just that, there's a lot of Americans that are rich, like the Bill Gates, and I'm not just saying just him, but there's a lot like him that go into different countries in Africa and really take advantage of the ignorance of the people there. There's a lot that people don't know, and what you don't know can hurt you, And so a lot of them, the money's never trickled down to the individuals, and then they still don't really know how to come up to this level like we're here in America. There's certain places that are, but they were taken over by the Dutch, by different countries and stuff like that. So, excuse me. I think I think we will see Africa flourish, because now that they're doing what's right, they can't help but flourish.
I think all these countries are going to become self-sustaining to a large extent. If you look at China, 200 years ago, China was fully self-sustaining, right? So what happened? The Chinese continent was self-sustaining. The British found a love for tea.
Yes.
They wanted to trade something for the tea. The Chinese said, "We'll take gold," because we really don't need anything else.
Right.
Well, of course, I don't want to say the British. I'm going to call it the banker class. The British East India Trading Company didn't want to
East
give
Indian
up.
Trading Company.
And they were not Indian.
Right.
They did not want to give up their gold, so they got the Chinese jacked up on opium.
Right.
And then they had something to trade them with,
See?
and they enslaved the entire Chinese continent with opium.
Look at that pattern.
Yeah. Look at that pattern over and over again. I was talking with a guy from Youngstown, Ohio today.
Yes.
And we were talking about the projects, the Westlake Terrace projects.
Yes.
And I said to him, goodness, man, those things were pretty rough, because
Right.
I remember the shootings that happened in these projects.
Right.
And he said, Chris, they weren't up until like 1989. He said, and then someone injected drugs into the neighborhood. And it was good, because for the first time, the guy is being accusatory.
Right.
And he knew, and I knew who he was talking about, and we knew, we got it. We didn't need
Right.
to answer the question.
Right.
But the point being is that in Youngstown's urban community, it was a healthy, productive community.
Right.
They jack them up on welfare.
Yep.
They got rid of our industry, and then they put the drugs in.
Yes.
Then they put the illicit rap music in there.
Right. And then the sexuality.
And then the sexuality. Before they're done, they're going to have all of our men wearing red high heels, right? And so it's a constant trend. It's a constant.
That's what
it's,
this. That's
some
what this
party
fentanyl
is
crisis
using. Yeah,
is.
it was a great conversation. What were you going to say? I'm sorry.
I'm saying that's what this fentanyl crisis is. It's part of that injecting drugs into, when you allow the borders to be open, and then you're saying, hey, fentanyl's coming from China, going through Mexico, coming up into America, and you're saying, hey, open the borders. So you're saying kill our people.
Yeah.
And so now we have this fentanyl crisis, but there's also another level to this. They're using drugs and the legalization of drugs it's part of the psychological attack that they're doing on the people. So you see after the drugs, then there's like this takeover. There's this ultimate takeover, and it creates this area of stagnation because now the people are dependent on the government. Now they're doped up. Now they're confused about their identity. Now you've got them just in this place of stagnation. They call it gentrification because what happens is they come in and take over their areas where they're living.
I mean, can you imagine for a second if we hadn't had the current administration? Can you imagine what could have been the counterfactual, right?
We'd
if we
still
had
be
the alternate?
bamboozled.
So the point is, there's been a lot that's shifted between January 20th,
Absolutely.
right, this year and today. And we just celebrated 100
100
years,
days.
right? 100 days, of the administration.
Right.
And it feels like it's been almost 3 years.
Right.
Even if it's just been 100 days. So many of these things that we're talking about, they're actually just common sense.
Right.
At the end of the day, I will always tell you, the common man on the street
Right.
just wants to be able to live the American dream.
just
They just
wants
want to be able to
a good life.
pay
Right.
for their school,
Right.
their meals, have food on the
Right.
table. Many of these guys, care less of who is the name of their senator. They don't
Right.
even know the name of the governor.
Right.
But they want to live, just want to live
They
the
just want
American
to take
dream.
care of their
So that's
family.
why we need ethical leaders. We
yes.
need moral leadership. We need
Yes.
leaders that actually have a heart.
Yes.
And not just lead from the head, but lead from the heart.
Yes.
When I started this show was about a year and a half ago. One of my first guests on the show was Kenneth. And on that episode, the way I would describe it is that Kenneth and I were sort of frustrated and with not a lot of answers.
Right.
Right. And to his point, at that point, we were going through a totalitarian nightmare threat at the local level.
Right.
And we were being threatened. There was this serious pressure to silence, all of this stuff. And so here we are. We have to move forward. We're under pressure, under duress.
Right.
And we don't know which way to go. We don't know which way is up.
Right.
And you compare that conversation to what we have now, which is a
Absolutely.
happy, healthy conversation.
Right.
It's a statement of where things are going.
Right.
But I just want to double down on the point. We need every man, woman, and child to be involved at the local level,
Absolutely.
fighting for the family,
Absolutely.
fighting for the country, fighting for the rich history of the state of Texas,
Yes.
and our moral foundations. We need those returned.
We have to.
And with that being said, I appreciate both of you.
Thanks for having
Thank you very much for being on the show. Kenneth, congratulations on your appointment.
Thank you so much. The fight is not over yet. It's just beginning.
You are a fighter.
That's right.
And you're
brother.
becoming more of a fighter. I can see it in you
Yes.
Thank you so much.
as we get to know each other even more.
Absolutely. Do you
And
mind
Ale-
if I give my website?
Please.
AlexandriaButlerCampaign.org, and you can check out what I believe in, and you can donate. You can join us. We need boots on the ground because we got to get this guy out of the seat.
That race is going to be incredible.
Yes, I agree.
And Alexandria, I feel like you're bringing a dynamic
Absolutely.
that is going to be just so fascinating to watch. It is not going to be. It is not going to be boring. It is not going to be boring.
Yeah, we're gonna have fun out here.
It's gonna be a blast. I can't wait for that one. Well, that's it. And I want to thank the audience. I want to thank the Mike Con Network. I want to thank Radiodabang. And this is Chris Heasley with the Chris Heasley Radio Show. Tune in next Saturday for one more